It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha! Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone. Brouhaha time. Marshall Wood and Dale McKee for tonight's edition of the Brouhaha. Dale, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How you been doing?
Well, I tell you what, I'm doing all right. I've been it's been a little chilly.
Has it? I haven't.
I have. I don't know about you.
I think it's warming up every day.
Is it?
Yeah, I think.
Well, I'm ready.
But listen, I hear the rain's coming.
The rain.
The rain is coming. 2 to 4 inches by the end of the weekend.
Oh my goodness.
What you think?
Let it rain.
Maybe it'll be 2 inches.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Dale, I'm looking here, and at your sideline view, and I see that I like the way it started growing up.
Growing up,
man, that brings all kind of thoughts to mind, sports-wise.
Right.
Okay, talk about growing up. Now, you were growing up. How did sports affect that in your youth?
Well, I grew up on in an area at that time where everybody just got out and played sports all the time. We would be 8, 9 years old. We didn't watch a lot of TV. You'd watch TV on Saturdays just about. Lone Ranger and Gunsmoke and all that. But most of the time, we're out. Sunset at 8:15. We were out to 8:15. And we'd have our own baseball games and stuff like that. And I'm talking about 9, 10-year-old. And then we'd play a little football. And then I can't remember playing much basketball growing up, but I did a little later. But when I was growing up, that's what we did. We just did a little, it's neighborhood ball, had a lot of kids involved.
I've always seen a kid walking around with a football or a baseball and bat and a glove or a basketball. Always somebody heading to play somewhere. We had on McElwain Drive. I lived on McElwain Drive and down there close to Wayne. I guess that's Wayne Street down there that goes out toward the county lake, the old county lake. There was a pasture down there on the left, and we had the cow pasture conference where we played our football games down there. And buddy, I tell you what, if you could survive that, you could survive just about anything. It was often a bloody mess.
we one time got up a game with another neighborhood.
Oh man!
Oh yeah, and listen, I can't remember, but all these parents came out. There's like 15, 20 parents, and we actually had this older man that refereed the game for us, and I remember doing all that, so it was fun growing up.
That was a big part of our youth. I don't know that the kids do that as much these days. I don't see it. I think in general, most of the athletes, except the very, very select few that are high achievers, when they finish their practice, say at the school, any school, they're finished for the day. A lot of times you used to see, especially basketball, you'd ride around Waynesboro and all the playgrounds would be full. Yeah.
You'd see girls playing against guys and all this, and I don't see that much anymore.
Yeah.
I don't see kids out much. It's more like they're riding around. I guess.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. What'd you touch on here in your opening stanza here with your sideline?
Well, I was talking about that the famous sports magazine Sports Illustrated was slowly going away, and that they laid off most of their workers up there. And so, I was just talking about, when I was a youth, we used to get that in the mail.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and, they just had such great pictures, but besides the articles, the pictures especially, I remember the Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier.
Oh, man.
We couldn't see a lot of that on TV back in those days because everything was pay-per-view, and you'd have to drive, to 100 miles to see it. And so you could see it on ABC News Worldwide Sports about a month later.
Yeah.
But then you'd see the pictures, of a punch that Frazier gave Ollie, or Ollie gave
You see the sweat frozen flying off.
Yeah. I mean, just fantastic pictures. But I remember getting Sports Illustrated and Sporting News.
Yeah.
And I always used to run down and get me a Street and Smith in August when they come out with the football predictions for all the things. We always thought that was a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, so that was the kind of the way I guess, you know, Sporting News, you know, I used to love it because it would come every week and it would have every box score of every baseball game played that week, you know, and I thought that was the greatest thing around, you know.
Well, those were good times.
They were.
You know, and Sporting News. And that's kind of what we're about in our own kind of twisted up, mixed up kind of way. Sporting News, huh? You are a bona fide because, you know, sports writer. But this, though, I don't know. But anyway, I do know this. We got a guest tonight.
Yeah.
Tell us about our guest.
Well, our guest is Creg Stephenson, and he is with AL.com.
Okay.
And that's an Alabama-based kind of a sporting news. And he is a Hurley, Mississippi native.
Hurley, East Central.
Went to East Central High School, and he used to work down there around Pascagoula and Moss Point for the papers down there. I think they called it the Mississippi Press in Pascagoula. And he was down there for many years, and that's how I got acquainted with him.
Yeah.
And so now he's over there, and they just had a really historical week there that week that Nick Saban retired.
Yeah.
Nick Saban probably got more publicity than Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick together. Combined.
Yeah.
He probably got more headlines than Joe Biden.
Everything went away but him.
Or Donald Trump. You know, he was... Oh, Uncle Nick was
big
in there.
Deal, boy.
Yeah, he was a big deal.
Big deal.
So he's just going to fill us in on all that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. So I'll tell you what, let's do, Dale. Let's take a commercial break. And then after this break, we'll come back with tonight's guest. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back with you after this commercial break with tonight's guest, Creg Stephenson.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Creg Stephenson of AL.com. AL.com, let me get that straight here right off the bat, okay? Well, listen, let me just ask you something. This must be a sports writer delight the last 8 days in Alabama.
My goodness, I'll tell you what, I went to the Rose Bowl. You know, I went up and covered the Rose Bowl. As many, you know, we sent like 8 or 9 people from our staff out there, and I was out there all week. I left the day after Christmas and got home on January 3rd. So I figured, let's kind of ease into the off season, you know, and maybe, you know, we'll have recruiting and stuff to worry about, but it won't be that bad. And then, 4 o'clock on January 10th, the bombshell of Nick Saban's retirement, and it has been nonstop since then, including here in Mobile with Kane Womack, the head coach at South Alabama, leaving to join Saban's staff. So I had to cover 2 coaching searches in 8 days, and it's been wild, man. It really has.
And right on the horizon is the Senior Bowl coming up too. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
so
about 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks from there. So yes, it is. There is no rest at all. You know, it's kind of become that anymore, of course, with the transfer portal and all that stuff going on. I mean, there really is no off season. You know, that's what we signed up for, I guess. But it is football pretty much 365 days a year. I hope you're not going to ask me too much about basketball because I haven't had time to pay attention to it.
Well, I just see the headlines every now and then. Alabama coach Oates got in trouble the other night for pushing a player from the opposite team, and I think after watching it, the rerun of it, I'd have pushed him too. Like, what are you doing in my huddle? Get out of my huddle. But anyway, well, tell us about your first reaction to Nick Saban leaving Tuscaloosa. Or not leaving Tuscaloosa, but stepping down.
Yeah, right. We've kind of been hearing rumblings about it. It seemed more possible this year than any year in the past, just by what you've been hearing and kind of the way he had been. It seemed like he was really kind of taken the time to savor everything this year that he had not done in the past. He had, like, for example, the last home game, he made a big, or actually, I take the second, it was at the Auburn game, in Auburn. He made a big deal about coming back out of the locker room and going and thanking the fans and all that kind of thing. And it's something he had not traditionally done in the past. So you kind of make a mental note of that sort of stuff. And it seemed like maybe he was thinking about winding down. And then, and just kind of the comments he made about the state of college football, and maybe he was just didn't really have the energy to keep up with it anymore, with all the, like we talked about, the transfer portal and NIL and all that kind of stuff. And of course, he's 72 years old. So, but the fact that he actually did it, and when he did it, took me by surprise. I thought that maybe if it was going to happen, it would have happened a little later in the off season. Maybe he would have finished off the recruiting class in February. And maybe just hung it up right before spring practice started or something like that. But I guess that would not have allowed them to go out and do a coaching search. And unlike some of the others who have done that, like Bob Stoops at Oklahoma or Urban Meyer at Ohio State, there was really nobody on the staff that you thought was ready to take over. He didn't have, he had a couple of those guys in the past, like Steve Sarkisian, for example, but he'd gone on to Texas. So I guess if it was going to happen, this was the time it kind of needed to happen. And we knew that Saban was not going to do a farewell tour or anything like that. But, it was a very, very much a surprise, but a surprise that it might have been, 2 years ago.
Well, do you think that Alabama hired their first choice?
No. I do think that it was pretty close. Now, I think they made a good hire, and certainly a qualified hire, but I think that if they had their choice of, anyone realistic, they weren't going to get Kirby Smart or Steve Sarkisian. Those guys aren't leaving Georgia and Texas for Alabama. But of the realistic options, I thought Dan Lanning, the coach at Oregon, was probably number one. He had been on Saban's staff. He had been on Georgia's staff. He had recruited a lot in the South, whereas Kalen DeBoer hasn't really done that. And he's younger, too. So I thought that was probably the first choice, but they found out pretty quick he wasn't leaving Oregon. They got all that Nike money at Oregon, so they made a pretty sweetheart deal to keep him there. And but I thought DeBoer, probably was the next in line, and obviously they moved so quickly, you would have to think he was very much close to the top of the list. But if he has won everywhere he's been, won big everywhere he's been. 25-3 at Washington, obviously some really great success at lower college levels, NAIA, and the one drawback against him is he has no experience coaching or recruiting in the South, and he's gone out and added some guys to his staff that have done that, but it's really if you're worried about something as an Alabama fan or observer, that's what it is.
Well, do you think, now I know he's probably got his offensive staff pretty well intact. He's bringing up the wide receivers coach, O-line coach. I'm not sure about the quarterbacks coach yet, but he does have a Robert Gillespie is returning. He's a Hattiesburg, Mississippi native. He is returning, so he's a pretty good recruiter from what I hear. And then on the defensive side, he's only bringing one Alabama, or just keeping one of the Alabama assistants, the D-line coach. The D-line coach, And so, but then he made a pretty big hire in Shane. Is it Womack or Kane?
Womack.
Womack. Okay.
Womack. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to unpack all that. Yeah, he brought 4 of his 5 offensive assistants from Washington, including the coordinator, Ryan Grubb, who's also quarterback coach, brought the wide receivers coach, O-line coach, tight end coach, and then, as you said, kept Robert Gillespie on as running back coach. Defensive side of the ball, kept Freddie Roach as the defensive line coach, and then hired Kane Womack, who, people in your part of the world will remember his dad, Dave, was a longtime assistant at both Southern Miss and Ole Miss. He was there during the Bauer days, and then later with Fedora. And then he was with Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss. Kane actually played at Southern Miss. He was a walk-on late 2000s, but he got a little bit of playing time. And his wife is from Oak Grove, so he's got roots in that part of the state. But yeah, it was an interesting move, I thought, because you don't see a lot of guys who are already head coaches move down to become assistants. Although it has happened, we've seen some guys. The Kent State coach left to join Deion Sanders' staff at Colorado. We saw the North Dakota State coach leave to go to USC. So it has happened. It's just rare. And the biggest thing is he got about $1.5 million raise to leave South Alabama to go to Alabama and be the defensive coordinator. They had worked together at Indiana and have maintained a really close friendship since then. So again, it was surprising, but not totally unfathomable for that to have happened. And then Womack, they brought in the Buffalo head coach, Maurice Linguist, who's a guy that has been an assistant at Mississippi State and a couple other places, to be the DB's coach. So I guess they're still looking for a special teams coach and maybe one other defensive coach, whether that's a cornerbacks coach or a outside linebackers or whatever. I believe Womack is going to coach the inside linebackers and Linguist to be the safeties coach. So that's kind of where it stands right now. But it seems like on the defensive side of the ball especially, he is bringing in outside help, not only from a recruiting standpoint, but also because Washington's defense wasn't really that good. So I think they wanted to upgrade there to come to Alabama and play in the SEC.
It seems like Alabama's been hit pretty hard with the transfer portal in the last eight days or so. The thing about the transfer portal, I just want your opinion on it. When a guy like that, Caleb Downs or Proctor, the offensive tackle, go into to that, you can't really replace them with any talent that's at the same level, because I would assume that all the good transfer portal kids, most of them are out of there, right?
That's right. Most of them have already signed. Now, there will be another round of the portal after spring practice runs May 1st through the 15th, and that's for guys, maybe a guy who decided, I'm going to stick it out through spring practice, and if I don't win a starting job, then maybe I'll go. So there'll be some good players that'll come through at that point. But, yeah, for the most part, you're not going to – there's not going to be a Caleb Downs or Jaden Proctor, or even maybe an Isaiah Bond in the portal. The rule is the portal had closed whenever it was, but when you have a coaching change, it opens again for 30 days from your school. And so the schools that have had to replace coaches in the last couple of weeks, Washington, Arizona, Alabama, and now South Alabama, among others, they're the ones that are getting hit now. And it's interesting the way it's happened. I think people kind of thought in the past that Alabama was kind of transfer portal proof, that if they really wanted to keep a guy, they would be able to. But you started to see some situations where, you had a guy like Proctor, who's from Iowa, Caleb Downs, who's from right outside of Athens, Georgia, and you're thinking that they, in reality, if in a vacuum, they would have gone somewhere else to play. But they wanted to play for Nick Saban. And now that Nick Saban's gone, they'll go somewhere else.
Yeah. Now, South Alabama has already promoted Major Applewhite, and how's his staff?
Right.
He's lost a lot of his staff, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Womack fired 4 coaches at the end of the season, and so they were already down 4. Then they lost one guy to Tulane. He led the defensive line coach, who's actually one of their better recruiters. Went to Tulane. So then Applewhite's moving up from offensive coordinator to head coach. So I think there's only like 3 guys left on the staff now. So they've got to hire 7 coaches between now and spring practice.
Ooh.
I think that Womack already had 2 or 3 guys identified that he was getting ready to hire. And assuming, they still want to come and work for Applewhite, they'll probably join the staff. But yeah, it's a rough time for them for sure.
Well, okay. Now you've talked about those 2. Let's talk about the conferences and things like that. I'm hearing, and I don't know if you've heard it today, but they've got, somebody has got an antitrust suit against maybe a couple of the conferences. Maybe the
Florida State and the ACC, I know, are going to battle over, grant of rights and TV money and all that sort of thing. And yeah, I don't know. It seems like we're heading for something bad with all of that. Florida State's trying to get out of the ACC because they claim the ACC is not really, or that ESPN, which owns their TV rights, has not really gone to bat for them. That ESPN has, kind of taken the SEC's favor, I guess, over the ACC, and that's led to lesser revenue for Florida State and potentially Florida State being left out of the college football playoff and all that. But the way these things work is if Florida State they have a contract with the ACC for another, 12 or 13 years. If they were to leave the ACC, then their broadcasting rights would stay in the ACC, which I don't know how that would work. Or they have to pay a huge exit fee and $70 million or something like that. So I don't know how it's all going to pan out, but it's not going to get it's going to get pretty ugly for sure. I don't know where Florida State thinks they're going to go. They had a chance years ago to join the SEC and didn't want to do it. Potentially, if they were to leave the SEC, I guess the SEC would take them. If they were to leave the ACC, I guess the SEC would take them. They're a pretty big property and obviously, big regional draw and that sort of thing. But, it seems like we're trending toward a couple of super conferences, one owned by ESPN and one owned by Fox, which Fox obviously has the Big Ten's rights now. So, yeah, it's the college football is not going to look much like what we know it in the next 5 to 10 years, I would say.
Yeah, but the thing, it's almost like a bad time for Florida State to come out, though, as a free agent. I mean, they're basically trying to be a free agent in football, and, I feel sorry for people like them in Washington State that's kind of been left out of the mix. But, you keep hearing about a 60-team super conference. I say a super conference, but a big-time league, college league of just 60 teams. And it seems like, and I've heard that for 20 years, and it just seems like it's getting closer and closer and closer. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's probably where we're headed. With they created the 12-team playoff to kind of throw a bone to the small conferences, but even then, there's only going to be one. Looks like one team out of these quote-unquote smaller conferences are going to be able to make it. But, yeah, it seems like certainly with the way they moved around all the teams out of the Pac-12 and everybody's kind of trying to figure out who's going to be in charge. That's the problem with college football is you don't have an an overarching president or commissioner or anything like that. You have all these conference commissioners, and they're like little kings of their little kingdom, and they don't want to give up any power, so that's why you wind up with all of them going to war against each other. And it's probably a good, analogy to, medieval times or something with all of this going on. But I think that, college football would be well served if they put one person in charge of everything, but you're not going to get that when you have a bunch of people who want to be the boss.
I want to change courses for a minute here. We've talking about Alabama and college football in general. I want to reel back in and head over to the Plains for a minute and see what happened to Cadillac. A couple of years ago, he finished out everything. Everybody loved him. Hugh came in there and all high fives and smiles. What's the deal? What happened to him?
Well, I can't say for sure, but there are a lot of rumors about some sort of off-field deal with him. You can kind of read between the lines on that. Yeah. Because it was really strangely timed for him to leave, and obviously his name has not popped up with any other job. I mean, if his reputation were clean, I thought he'd have been a great candidate for the South Alabama job, for example. But it just never. You just never saw. You have never seen his name pop up with anything. So I don't know. I think maybe the truth will come out at some point. But in terms of what he's going to do in the short term, yeah, it's strange for him to leave Auburn, because if there is an Auburn man of the last 25 years, he is certainly near the top of it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about Auburn, it just seems like Freeze is just kind of, he's almost starting over this year. You know, when you go into a new program like he did last year, he hired a whole new staff. Well, you know, that staff has to adjust, and that's like, well, now he's got a whole new staff going into next year. So he's still back at year one, you know. If he's got a 5-year plan, it's extended to 6 now, I guess.
Yeah, well, you guys, I'm sure, remember his time at Ole Miss, and he recruited at a very high level. Now, obviously, all of that wasn't done legally, but those kind of chains are off now. You can recruit the way he recruited at Ole Miss, and that's legal now. But he's always been a great recruiter, a relentless recruiter, as a matter of fact, one of the better recruiters, I would say, in the SEC in the last 20 years. But the consistency of his program from year to year and game to game has always been a thing. You remember when he was at Ole Miss, they beat Alabama 2 years in a row, and then they would lose to Ole Miss 30-0, or they would lose to Arkansas 30-0. That's just the way his program is. You know, this year they lost at home by 21 to New Mexico State, and the next week almost beat Alabama. I mean, it's just the way he is. That's kind of what you're getting when you get Hugh Freeze. He's going to put a great, talented roster on the field, but you never know what you're going to get from game to game. It's just, I mean, that's kind of what you get with Hugh Freeze.
Yeah. Talk about knowing what you get. Let's flip over to the NIL a minute. And I want to ask this question now. I don't know if this is true or not. It seems like I'm hearing if this is even legal. Are some schools, do you think, paying athletes way to come with NIL money and then therefore not having to use scholarships? Have you heard anything about that?
I have not heard that. I do know that obviously it is technically illegal to pay to use NIL money as an inducement to come. You know, you can't say, you're not supposed to be able to say, you know, if you come here, we'll pay you $100,000. Right. You're supposed to use NIL to take care of the guys that are already there. Now it's kind of fuzzy. You know, it's obviously, you can say you don't maybe not necessarily give them the money up front, but they come to realize that, hey, if they go there, they're going to get taken care of. So there's probably loopholes. The NCAA doesn't seem to have much appetite to enforce it right now, although they did just hit Florida State pretty hard, and maybe they're trying to use them as an example with this. But in terms of using NIL money to cover a scholarship, I have not heard that. It seems like that would be highly, highly illegal. Okay.
Well, Ole Miss got a transfer from A&M, a Nolan kid that plays on the defensive line, and he was supposed to be one of the top recruits in the portal at that time. He's come out in the last day or two and said he's telling recruits, don't go to Texas A&M because they won't pay you.
Yeah, I read that. so read the fine print, he said.
So I guess you got to win a national championship to get paid or something. I don't know, but
maybe, or just not, go at 7-5 or whatever they did.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. As far as I'm concerned, this is bad news because we're having a good time, but we've about run out of time. And we want to thank you so much for being with us and sharing with us. Well, Dale's got a finger up.
I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Stephenson because last week the results came out and he was voted the Alabama Sports Writer of the Year, and we want to congratulate him.
Well, wow, that is a big deal.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with that. It's a national organization, the National Sports Media Association. They name a sports writer and sports broadcaster of the year. So, yeah, that's going to be fun. The banquet is at the end of June in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm looking forward to going to that. Meeting a lot of really big names in the business, and I'm really proud of that. As you guys probably know, I am from Mississippi originally. I'm a graduate of East Central High School in the Pascagoula area, and my first job was at the Meridian Star back in the mid-'90s, so I have a lot of roots over there, a lot of good people I know over there. I've been to Waynesboro a couple times.
Hot diggity dog.
Some Moss Point losses in the football playoffs, I know, at least a couple of times. So,
well, we're glad you got to see that.
Absolutely. I covered, you guys remember Ron Norman, the basketball.
Oh, yeah.
I covered him when he was at Pascagoula. So, yeah, a lot of fun back in the day.
Well, congratulations, and we appreciate you taking time to be with us. I'm going to ask you to hold on just a minute. Dale and I, we're going to take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be back with tonight's final segment right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everybody. Always enjoy it. That's the second time he's been on our show, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I always enjoy talking to him.
Yeah, he's really informative, and of course we've got a lot of Alabama fans in our listening area. So
you think?
I think we do.
Yeah, I think so too. Hey, I like Alabama.
Yeah.
You know, I holler for Alabama. You know, I'm full for the South. You know. Yeah. For the neighborhood, you know.
So if Alabama plays Tennessee, you pull for Alabama because it's south of Tennessee.
Yes, I pull for Alabama because
I
was born in Alabama.
But Auburn is south of Alabama, Tuscaloosa. So do you pull for Auburn when they're playing Alabama?
I'm not going specifically by. Is it the latitudes that go east and west?
It could be longitude. It could be one of them.
I don't necessarily go by.
Long goes this way.
Okay, so it's longitude. I don't go specifically. Bless his heart. I don't go specifically, by the longitudinal lines. Mm-hmm. I just kind of come up with a general blast picture of what I view as the South. Now, if you may have different teams from the South playing, I always try to pull for Alabama. Always seems to be in the hunt, so I like for whoever's coming out of the South to be a winner. So just like Steely Dan said, they got a name for the losers in the world. I got a name for the winners in the world. I want a name when I lose. You ever heard that song? They call Alabama the Crimson Tide. Call me Deacon Blues. That was written in the 70s. So I always kind of like to pull for whoever I think's got the best chance of taking the South to the top. And historically, it's usually been Alabama. I would probably pull for anybody but LSU. I couldn't go that far.
Do you consider Florida part of the South?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Because there's a lot of...
I understand.
Northern people now.
Well, I consider the SEC school as part of the South.
I got you.
Southeastern Conference.
So what about Maryland? University of Maryland.
They Yankees up there. They Northern.
Mason-Dixon.
I'm telling you, I got my own. But none of that matters. It's all about what I think.
Virginia.
Don't matter.
Virginia.
The Yankees. They Yankees in my book.
Okay.
The Yankees.
Well, I thought everything below D.C. was considered the South.
Well, you might think that, but
all the way to Texas.
Yeah.
Like a little curve there.
Yeah, you got to make a curve. Okay.
Kind of like a banana deal.
Well, let's see. I guess, Dale.
Yeah.
I guess that's about all the time we got. Right quick. Talk about our divisional, our conference championships coming up. Who we got? We've got the Detroit Lions. We got the Kansas City Chiefs. We got the San Francisco 49ers, and we got the Baltimore Ravens. Who you like with the Lions and the 49ers?
Well, I think you got to go with the home. Home team's going to be the favorite in both of them, I just assume. Of course, every game, wow. They were some games the weekend. Let's see, who went out to Frisco? Green Bay went out there and played the pants off the 49ers, and Tampa Bay wasn't any slouch yesterday for Detroit.
I'll tell you what it is.
But they've got 4 good teams left because they're the top seeds in each league, 1 and 2. But they also, all four of them have got outstanding quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, outstanding.
How about that Purdy story?
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah, you know, he probably didn't play the greatest game, but he won the game when he had to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wasn't he with the 49ers at one time?
Who's that?
Purdy.
Brock Purdy?
Yeah.
Well, he's with them now.
I've got him flipped over. The Lions quarterback.
Okay.
He was there, wasn't he?
No,
Wasn't he with-
he was with the Rams.
Oh, okay.
Remember, they traded him for Goff is his name,
Jared Goff.
and he was traded to
That was the battle they had with the Rams. See, I've got them mixed up.
Stanford, yes,
Well,
Stanford.
see, when you go out west, Rams, 49ers,
Yeah.
Chargers, it's all the same. Seahawks,
Yeah.
it's out west.
Raiders, yeah.
Raiders, all the same. But anyway, it's always a pleasure, Dale.
Thank you there.
I enjoy spending our time together. We thank our listeners for listening, joining us.
We do.
Well, yeah, I do. Do you know?
We'll just tell them to send a check.
But we do appreciate them, and we want them to know that they can follow us during the week on our Facebook page at the Brouhaha, and on all of our shows are cataloged on our YouTube channel, the Brouhaha. So y'all check us out. But now it's come to the time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
Well, goodbye, and Dale and I'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Get us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.